Manifesto of the Free Humans, Chapter 4, Spontaneous Order in the Marketplace. When one examines many of the words used to describe our society, such as democracy, freedom, representative, or capitalism, you find that these words are simply abstract euphemisms which are used to disguise the true authoritarian nature of our civilization. We are supposed to believe that we, the people, are represented by corrupt politicians and that we are free despite constantly being exploited and ordered around by authoritarians. Much in the same way that we are told we are free in our personal lives, we are also told that we are free in our financial lives. Nothing could be further from the truth. No matter what political system is employed by the ruling class, the people are always faced with varying levels of subjugation. The word democracy is used to make our oppressive political system seem more benevolent and legitimate, while the term capitalism is used to give the impression that we operate under a free market economy. Neither are true. Despite the many definitions of capitalism, it is generally associated with the rights of private property, private production of goods, and a free market economy lacking in state intervention. However, although the U.S. and many other Western nations are thought of as capitalist, they typically fail to respect private property and promote heavy state regulation of economic exchanges. At face value, it may seem like capitalist economies represent a free market, but when you take a look at property taxes, government subsidies for big corporations, and the mountain of red tape faced by entrepreneurs in these countries, it should become painfully obvious that a truly freed market has never existed under what most people identify as capitalism. This is one of many problems with associating the idea of a decentralized market of exchange with the system known as capitalism. To those who would say the problem is a misunderstanding of capitalism, we wish to reemphasize that capitalism, socialism, and communism have all been associated with statism and authoritarianism. This is an extremely important point, especially considering the fact that so many anarchists are attached to one of these terms. Some are attached to the term socialism because they align with the stated goals of socialism, such as ending poverty. Meanwhile, others are attached to the term capitalism because they align with its stated goals of free enterprise and private property. However, with both of these systems, the stated goals are vastly different from the ends they achieve. For this reason and many others, the term should be abandoned when discussing future concepts of non-statist economic systems. The system that we have in place today, whether superficially appearing to be socialist or capitalist, could more accurately be called corporatism, mercantilism, or cartelism. These words describe a system where the elite use their power in government to control the rest of society and prop up their corporate partners by limiting competition through the political system. The monolithic corporations that now exist would have never been able to grow into what they are today without the help of government intervention and protection. Without government intervention, the infamous lobbyists in Washington would become obsolete because they would lose their power to influence and manipulate the marketplace through bribes and coercion. Government intervention and protection is the primary means by which the world's biggest corporations have devastated their competition and developed massive monopolies. In a truly freed market, there would be absolutely no need for a government because any service that is provided by a government can actually be better handled by entrepreneurs. In today's system, we don't have independent businesses working on a level playing field. Instead, we are left with the few massive corporations and cartels that use their power in government to maintain their monopolies and stomp out their competition. This is the very definition of fascism, the merger of state and corporate power. It has become the dominant economic system in the world. Looking back throughout history, we can see that an elitist parasite class has always sought to use the state, religious organizations, and any other influential mechanism as a way to live off the wealth and surplus of the people. Most of the leaders throughout the world propagandize the people into believing they live in a free and democratic society. This illusion pushes the masses to take their grievances to the polls like good citizens rather than taking their concerns into the streets or creating solutions that could actually make an impact. Currently, one of the most totalitarian nations on earth is called the Democratic Republic of North Korea. Likewise, the government in America and the European Union are some of the most fascist regimes in history, yet claim to operate under systems of capitalism or democratic socialism. It's a political word game that's designed to disguise the truth. Almost every economic analysis in the world is dictated by the ideas of two long-dead aristocrats. On one end of the spectrum, you have Karl Marx representing the labor theory of value and communism. Adam Smith can be found on the other end, representing capitalism and classical economics. Our whole way of doing business on this planet has changed very little since the time of these two men, and that could very well be the root of our problem. Imagine how much we could accomplish if a few people in every city across the world wrote their own economic manifestos and gathered to respectfully discuss their ideas. The masses refuse to accept last-generation iPods and video games, but without much thought accept ways of living that are centuries old. It's time for us to work together to create strategies where everyone can meet their needs without violating the rights of others. Capitalism and socialism are both terms that have been tainted by government and statism. They are terms that have been dragged through the mud for hundreds of years and mean very different things to many different people. The differences in definition often make discussion of these terms impossible, especially on the internet. We understand one could make the same argument regarding anarchism and its unfortunate association with violence. While it is true that certain schools of anarchists who view violent revolution as a legitimate tactic, they are not the majority. Most freedom-loving anarchists want to radically alter the systems of governance we have today, but do not advocate the force and violence we have seen displayed by those calling themselves socialists, capitalists, and communists. Much of the money that is collected through taxation is used to line the pockets of politicians and establish bureaucracies that add up to the size and power of government. A very small fraction actually ends up being spent on worthwhile public services. It should be obvious that if given the opportunity to allocate their own resources amongst themselves, communities would be able to provide services that are far superior to those that are forcefully imposed by central planners. Quite simply, our world does not need authority figures to dictate the course of human history. The brutality and callousness of past regimes should serve as a constant reminder of how dangerous it is to give people authority over the lives of others. Rulers of the past have taken credit for the hard work of the average people who have built civilizations on their command, leaving behind a historical myth that claims humanity owes its entire progression to kings, priests, politicians, and other authoritarians. In reality, we have the ingenuity of our ancestors to thank, not the tyrants who rode on their backs. The history books may glorify warlords, monarchs, and aristocrats as being the founders of our modern way of life, but this is only the result of the victorious warlords writing the history books. Many world-changing inventions, enlightening philosophies, and leaps in human development have been brought forth by those who spent their lives under the boots of authority, not those wearing the boots. Historically, authority figures have actually done their best to hinder this process and prevent the general population from empowering themselves with technology and philosophy. The power structures of the past were well aware that peasants had the potential to rise above oppression peacefully through the advancement of philosophy and development of advanced technology. This was very pronounced during the times of the Middle Ages, where people could lose their lives on counts of witchcraft if they were caught developing unknown technology or discussing any philosophy that may have undermined the existing establishment. Frederick Douglass stated that when he was a slave in the American South, he was not allowed to learn how to read a calendar or even know how old he was. The power structures of the world today are no different. They prevent research into alternative energy and alternative medical treatments, and stifle technological advancements with stiff regulations and intellectual property laws. There have been periods in history of significantly less government intervention in the economy, but these situations could hardly be referred to as the free market. So long as we are subject to central banks, government-mandated currency, taxation, bailouts, and regulations, we are dealing with a very tightly controlled market, not a free one. Through the government-mandated schools and regulated media, we are presented a story where economic sanctions and controls are necessary to keep people safe from the evil corporations who have monopolized the economy. This is a pretty clever trick because most people fail to take a few steps back to see that these corporations have been created and protected by government. In fact, many corporations are exempt to the regulations and taxes that are hoisted upon smaller businesses who are trying to compete. These are the policies that have created the completely unjust and unsustainable economic environment that has forced so many people into poverty and despair. Companies like Monsanto and Goldman Sachs would not survive a day in a truly free market that lacked the political mechanisms they currently use to stop out competition. They would be forced to depend on the support of the community and the integrity of their product. Fortunately, in the face of more honest and efficient entrepreneurs, corporations like Monsanto would be exposed and fall flat on their faces. The very concept of a corporation is a government-created entity which acts as a legal shield to keep CEOs from being held accountable for the messes they create. These legal loopholes have allowed the monopolization of certain industries, creating mega-corporations that no legitimate small business can possibly contend with. The state education system and corporate media keep the public in the dark by failing to acknowledge that our current economic model is a result of government intervention. In a world where people were actually allowed to trade freely without third-party intervention, everyone would be an entrepreneur. Sure, workers would still be needed, but our guess is that in a free society, most labor jobs would be filled with people trying to earn extra money, working a summer job, getting some startup money for their own business, a teen working their first job, and things of that nature. It seems that the wage-slave model of working a dead-end job for your entire life is due to a lack of choices currently in the marketplace. There's something to be said for picking up a skill and sticking with it throughout the years, but in a truly decentralized and free economy, there would be more of a potential to start your own business, which would then employ others. A group of entrepreneurs would also have more freedom to band together and form a commune, co-op, or mutualist enterprise. We believe that a freed market would favor non-hierarchical, worker-owned businesses. People are always free to enter whichever types of arrangements they prefer, but we predict that most people would likely prefer not working under authoritarian bosses. This preference for non-authoritarian work would lead some to gravitate towards horizontally owned businesses or entrepreneurship. Even in today's industries, businesses where workers have a share in the spoils of the company tend to be far more successful and offer better customer service because the employees have more of an incentive to do a good job rather than just punching a clock. The point is that without the state intervention and the propping up of corporations that do nothing but feed the consumerist frenzy, we would see a decrease in the need for pointless labor. We reject the notion that being a worker simply for the sake of work is virtuous. When it came to the working class, Konkin also argued that the state stifled innovation and entrepreneurship, which kept the working class busy doing meaningless busy work. He called workers and peasants, quote, an embarrassing relic from a previous age at best, and looked forward to the day that they will die out from a lack of market demand, end quote. Indeed, with technological growth pushing farther towards automation, the menial jobs done by most workers could be done by artificial intelligence, paving the way for existing workers to become entrepreneurs. In the world we are describing, the quality of life and creativity on the planet would explode and create a dynamic civilization with the potential for peace and abundance. Different currencies could be tested all throughout the world, while new ways of doing business and structuring society would develop in different areas until the optimum solution for health and well-being was discovered. These ideas would be voluntarily adopted by the masses because of the value added to their lives. This vision is possible. By now it should be common sense that initiating violence greatly diminishes the quality of any situation or relationship. Violence may seem to be a strong word to describe government policy, but legitimized threats of violence, backed by the guns and prisons of the state, are still acts of violence. If you disobey the government for too long or with too much fanfare, the end result is ultimately your death. By breaking the laws of the government, you will likely find yourself in their court system. If you choose not to participate, they can send out men with guns to your house to take you away and put you in a cage. At that point, if you refuse to go, they will use force on you, and if you attempt to defend yourself, you will be killed. The state wants the public to believe that only a guilty party resists an arrest. But what if that arrest was really an unjust kidnapping? Who is to say that the court issuing the charges is legitimate? Were the courts and laws in Soviet Russia or Nazi Germany legitimate? Were the people who disobeyed them guilty of a crime? Putting on a uniform and working for the king, the sheriff, or the president does not grant you the right to kick down the doors of nonviolent people and attempt to kidnap them. This systemic violence disrupts the process of spontaneous order by stifling human willpower and creativity. Spontaneous order is a way of describing the complex building process that takes place all throughout nature, as well as in interactions between human beings. When applied to human interaction, this building process is set into motion by people trying to solve problems and improve their quality of life. Human beings have an incredible ability to find solutions for any problems that may stand in our way. Just as a rushing river will forge a new path around a boulder that has fallen in its midst, groups of voluntarily cooperating people, freedom cells, will naturally find a way around any roadblock when they have a desire to do so. The phrase, "when there is a will, there is a way," is extremely relevant in this context and describes the process of spontaneous order and self-organization in a most concise way. It can be difficult for some to see this unfolding in nature because of how our day-to-day lives are compartmentalized and separated from our actual needs. Due to this compartmentalization, many of us have come to believe that there will be no food if the grocery store closes down, there will be no electricity without a government power grid, and there will be no safety without the King's Guards patrolling the community. However, all of these needs can be handled more proficiently by the open hearts and strong minds in our community. Without a state to hold us back, we will witness spontaneous order and self-organization within the agora.